And our meeting tonight is now open for sharing testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Elizabeth from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Florence, for the readings tonight on being free from the bondage of false responsibility. They were beautiful and touched me very deeply. For many years, I was under this bondage of false responsibility and feelings of guilt while my children were young, and especially as they entered their teenage years. I felt responsible for their paths, what decisions they might make, why they weren't making what I thought were good choices in various things. And this kind of human thinking and focus was very stressful for me, and no doubt for them, and certainly not God-centered. It took coming here at Plainfield and much work with a practitioner at Plainfield to understand that I, as a human mother, was not responsible for the unfoldment and growth of my children. God was and is. This has not been a quick dropping of false responsibility on my part, but it's taken much prayerful support and conscious acknowledgement that God is governing, guarding, and guiding them. I've been told many times to put them on the altar and give them up to God. As a result, there's been much healing of my thought so that I'm very free from this self-instituted burden. I strive to know daily that my boys are obedient to the mind that made them, and I try to show by example and live what I'm learning here. It's very comforting to know, as was read tonight, that, quote, the divine mind maintains all identities from a blade of grass to a star as distinct and eternal. I have much gratitude for all I have been learning to understand our true relationship to God and for the constant and loving support of practitioners here. Thank you.
Thank you. Candy from Wisconsin, go ahead.
Thank you. Tonight, I would like to express gratitude to the lesson writers and those that read the lesson online. Yesterday morning, I took my grandchildren to the park. As I was watching them, I was overcome with an extreme sense of weariness. The thought came for me to listen to the lesson on my phone. And while listening, this statement on page 218 of Science and Health stood out. The scriptures say, they that wait upon the Lord shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. The meaning of that passage is not perverted by applying it literally to moments of fatigue, for the moral and physical are as one in their result. When we wake to the truth of being, all disease, pain, weakness, weariness, sorrow, sin, death will be unknown, and the mortal dream will forever cease. My method of treating fatigue applies to all bodily ailments, since mine should be, and is, supreme, absolute, and final. I felt that this was written just for me, and with this, the weariness lifted, and we had a very active and wonderful day. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you. Jeremy.
First, I have a testimony from Barbara in Pennsylvania. This week's watching point 486 from 500 Watching Points by Gilbert Carpenter, includes, quote, a deep insight into Mrs. Eddy's use of the word sin, defines it as yielding to the mesmerism that suggests life, intelligence, and existence separate from God. End quote. That was a wow for me. Such a clear, precise definition of sin. Thanks to Divine Mind for providing such truth, and to Mrs. Eddy, Mr. Carpenter, and Plainfield for getting it to us. Now from mine. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be a member of this church and to be learning Christian Science here. My son will be graduating from high school on Friday, and I've been thinking of all that I must give gratitude to God for. I'm grateful that for the past 6 years he's been able to see how much I have gained from this church, and that he has been able to take part in the Sunday school here to learn what he needs. He has many times said he really enjoys coming to the church. I'm grateful for the years of safe travels that God has given us as I've journeyed between Connecticut and New Jersey. Every trip has been filled with blessings and the protection only God can provide. I'm very grateful for all that I have learned here about giving our kids to God and knowing He is their real Father. This has taken so much stress and pressure away. I'm grateful for practitioner support, which at every step has helped me to see my kids more clearly and know that just as I have a purpose and place in God's plan, so do they. How wonderful to know there can be no separation between them and God. I'm also grateful to now be able to know that for everyone graduating, all of God's children will be led to where He wants them to be. It's so wonderful to have this science and this church delivering this message of truth and peace and love to the world. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy from New Jersey, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. I wish to express my gratitude for the service this evening, for the beautiful readings and the beautiful music as always. I am so grateful for all of the resources, the teachings, and the instructions that this church provides to aid and inspire us in our daily study of Christian Science. I am deeply grateful to my practitioner for her strong, loving support and for her instruction to take a verse from the lesson, our textbooks, or a hymn, and to work with it and to make it my own. I'm very grateful for this practical instruction, as this has been very helpful to me. Recently, as I have been working on stilling anxious thoughts and maintaining my peace, I have been working with hymn number 118. The words of this hymn gave me such a strong sense of peace that I decided to take a part of it and make it my own. I wrote on a note card, and this is in my words, I am stayed in God's tranquility. Love divine dwells in my heart, bidding my troubled thoughts be still, and with God's peace my spirit fills. I have been working with this and repeating it often throughout the day and whenever I find myself starting to feel anxious. Each time that I do this, I feel a strong sense of peace filling me. This has made a profound difference in me, and I am so grateful for the peace that I have gained from this, and for all that I am learning in Plainfield about how to apply what we are taught here in our daily lives. And I am very grateful to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. David from Florida, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm president of our condo association down here. It consists of 9 buildings. And when Hurricane Irma hit in September of 2017, it damaged all of our roofs. After inspecting the roofs, the insurance company gave us a check to replace only 2, and they weren't even the roofs with the worst damage. So we hired a public adjuster who specializes in these things. He had the roofs inspected and found that they all needed to be replaced. He then recommended a lawyer, and everyone agreed we had a solid case. So last October, we filed a suit asking for the amount needed to replace all the roofs. In early March, the insurance company came back with an offer of less than half of what we need. We, of course, turned it down. Our lawyer said this could go on for months and months, and if we actually did go to court, it would take 18 months just to get a court date. At that point, I asked a practitioner in the church for help on all of this. That was a month ago. She said to work with the thought, God's law of divine justice is in full and complete operation. I did this every time I thought of or had to address the situation. Well, last Friday, we received word that the insurance company was willing to settle for the amount we need, as well as pay for all the legal fees. This was a quick and amazing turnaround, and I am very grateful. I'm grateful for the work of the practitioner for Christian Science and to be a member of this church. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike from New York, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for the readings, for the music, and the testimonies, and all the prayers that go into this service tonight. I'm extremely grateful for the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independence weekly Bible lessons. They're such a wonderful example of the one divine mind that different members can write such cohesive lessons that blend into each other's months in advance and from diverse places around the globe. I was fortunate in class instruction to have learned some of the history of the lesson writing and development of the structure as it was revealed to Mary Baker Eddy by God. Sometimes I think I don't listen to God, but at one point I purchased from the bookmark the first couple years that they were in the present format, which was from the middle of 1898. Class instruction, we were advised that between 1910 and 1920, the format was perfected and made available to us either to supplement or use solely for our daily study. Somehow I never could understand them as well as the earliest ones. Bylaw in the Church Manual, page 43, under the heading No Incorrect Literature, states that, quote, also the spirit in which the writer has written his literature shall be definitely considered, unquote. The ones that did the most for me, even though I recycled them continuously, were written by a committee that I believe had some of Mrs. Eddy's most loyal workers, such as Julia Bartlett and Ira Knapp, writing them. I've learned from Plainfield things straight as far as adherence to bylaws immediately after Mrs. Eddy passed in 1910. Today, this church, due to its great love for Mrs. Eddy, just as the early workers, operates under the watchful eye of Mrs. Eddy, but without her personal presence, which is why I feel these lessons from this church are so outstanding. For these lessons, I'm most grateful to God, Christ Jesus, pioneers of the Plainfield Church, and of course, Mary Baker Eddy.
Thank you. Gary.
I'd like to express my gratitude tonight for everybody who prays for our services and our meetings. They are so filled with truth and love that they heal. I've experienced this many times over the years, and I was reminded recently of one of those experiences. It was a little while ago, but it was one afternoon. My throat became very sore, and I lost my voice. Well, there happened to be a statement in our lesson that week from Science and Health that stuck out to me and was very helpful to me that day. And that statement reads, discords have no support from nature or divine law. Well, I worked with that statement, and I declared to myself, well, this soreness has no support from nature or divine law. So it has no legitimate support anywhere. And that is why I don't have to have it. I don't have to accept it. Jesus knew that sort of thing, and that is how he healed. And that is what Christian Science is all about. Well, that evening, I attended a service in this church, and it was really beautiful because I was in need. And when I entered the church, I felt the comfort. I felt the love of God. And as the service progressed, I felt closer and closer to God's love. My voice started to come back. I was able to actually participate in the service. And by the end of the service, the soreness in my throat was gone and did not return. Well, I'm so grateful for this and many, many other healings. I'm so grateful to God for leading me to this church. I'm so grateful for the lesson sermons that we have that are also full of healing. And I'm so grateful to be here tonight with you all.
Thank you. Joanne from Florida, go ahead.
When I first came to Plainfield Church in Christian Science, I tried to share my joy in finding it with my family. They rejected it completely, and after several vain attempts on my part to reach an understanding, we drifted apart. About 15 years ago, I reconnected with my family, an older sister and 2 younger brothers. At first, they were happy I was reconnecting with them. But soon afterwards, it became apparent that they condemned me for not being around when my parents had passed on. They never said anything aloud, but I began to feel extreme guilt and self-condemnation. And over these past years, wept many times in private over it. I felt like I had deserted my parents, especially after all they had done for me. Even though I tried many times to express love to my sister and brothers, it wasn't long before they didn't want to see me at all. After last Sunday's roundtable session, I realized clearly that I didn't desert my family. God had lifted me out of a dysfunctional Italian Catholic sense of family to bring me into Christian Science and a true family of like-minded people who became dearer to me than any human family. Nothing but the pure love of God had made that possible. Then I realized that I hadn't started feeling the guilt and condemnation until I had put myself into the arena of my sisters' and brothers' lives. It was their thought that was laid upon me, not mine, and not something from a loving God. What a freedom. This realization was all made possible through my working with a practitioner here these past several weeks, and that healing round table on last week's lesson, God, the only cause and creator. I can't be grateful enough. I thank God for this blessed church and for Mrs. Eddy's pure Christian Science, which is being practiced and lived and taught here. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much for the readings and the music tonight. I'd like to give my gratitude tonight for all that's provided here at Plainfield Independent Church to help us make Christian Science practical in our lives. And I'm also very grateful for the practitioner support and instruction that I get here. Recently in my area, we had very heavy rains. I was using a chapter from Mary Baker Eddy's Spiritual Footsteps by Gilbert Carpenter, which is chapter 62, and he has instructions particularly on handling the weather. And there's plenty on our website also. I had to go out. It had been raining for a little bit, and it hadn't let up. And I had to go out and pick someone up at the train. And when I went out there, I was shocked to see the flash flooding in all directions. I have never in all the 30-some years that I lived there seen anything like this, and it was just a foot high in one couple of places and rushing everywhere. And this was during rush traffic time, so there were a lot of people that needed to get home. And it was difficult to pass through certain areas, and we're really not near any water bodies, so it was quite unusual. So I called a fellow church member to alert them. Neither of us realized the flash flooding was going on, although we had been working for the heavy rains. Within minutes of us speaking together, the rain just stopped. I picked up the person at the train and turned around and came back. And I don't even know how to explain. The waters had receded in the most amazing way. There's just no human way to explain. It was not even a minute that I turned around back. And the waters had become still. There was no more rushing. Everything had died down. And everybody was driving it was just beautifully safe. And no more heavy rains came back. And they even had predicted another storm later that night, and there was some concerns about flooding in some of the waters nearby us, but it never came about. And I'm just very grateful, and I wanted to share this because we do watches here in this church, and to me, this is really teaching about doing watches for the world. And sometimes we don't always see the results of our work, and so it's good to be reminded how important and powerful this work is. Because again, that rain just flooding everywhere. There was no place for that water to go, and it left. It was gone. And so I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig.
Thanks very much for the beautiful, inspiring music that we had and the wonderful readings. Very instructive readings. I was healed of type 2 diabetes here, and I thank God. I had gone many years very healthy, but I lost a lot of weight, and with the help of a practitioner and the watchful eye of a doctor that just watched me basically and measured me occasionally, the symptoms disappeared. It was beautiful, and actually the doctor kept looking for something else to go wrong and sending me through all sorts of tests, but couldn't find anything. My blood sugar numbers were still a little high, but all the symptoms had disappeared, all the numerous things they say go along with it. And it was type 2 diabetes. But luckily, well, at first it shocked me. My family, they were so concerned, but they came up with this argument, well, you were going to get it anyway. And it was very depressing and almost defeating. And then I had to take it back, and I had to think about it. And I thank God that we learn in this church that we don't have to have those things. That Mary Baker Eddy says, in science and health, the beautiful, good, and pure constitute his ancestry. Man is the offspring of God. Well, I love that. It gives you something to fight with. You don't have to just accept what's being thrown at you. And I'm sure it made the biggest difference, along with practitioner help, because when you're debilitated and feel like you deserve something, you're liable to get it. So I thank God for all the truths we have, and that, along with Martha Wilcox, we've been taught Martha Wilcox's article on body, that illnesses are mental, and that we can correct our thought and not have to deal with them. But many other things. But I thank God for this place and the combination of the simple understanding of the Bible, that God made everything, and it was very good. And I thank God for our freedom here through Mary Baker Eddy's Christian Science.
Thank you. Luba from Ohio. Go ahead.
This spring, my husband's lawnmower broke down, and we were trying to get by with the one that was inadequate. On a recent walk in our neighborhood, I saw a very good mower for sale, and the price was affordable. We just purchased that mower, and I am very grateful to God for filling our need as He always does. My gratitude to God, Mrs. Eddy, this church, and to my very loving, supportive practitioner, with whose help my thinking is changing. Thank you for tonight's reading, and I'm very happy to be here this evening.
Thank you. Amanda from Missouri, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Florence, I thank you for tonight's readings, a treatment on the temptation of personal responsibility. And tonight, I feel I must testify to the practitioner support that exists in this church, because someone may be listening, whether they be new or seasoned in Christian Science, that has hesitated about contacting a practitioner here. And I was once one of those people, and I resisted for quite some time. And I can only testify to my own experience, but I can say that without the help of a practitioner, I don't know where I would be. I don't know I would have had enough understanding to stay in this church or in Christian Science and out of the New Age movement. I'm grateful to our two practitioners here, as well as to Mrs. Evans, one of the prior practitioners, who I did not know, but I feel I do in many ways because of the testimony of others and what she has left here for this church. In Miscellany, Mrs. Eddy says, quote, animal magnetism, hypnotism, etc. are disarmed by the practitioner who excludes from his own consciousness and that of his patients all sense of the realism of any other cause or effect save that which cometh from God, and he should teach his students to defend themselves from all evil and to heal the sick by recognizing the supremacy and allness of good. This epitomizes what heals all manner of sickness and disease, moral or physical. That's the end of that quote. And my practitioner here demonstrated this. She always does, but in particular this week, I've been dealing with a return of some physical problems that I had tried somewhat half-heartedly to treat or defend myself from, but not very well. And when I called my practitioner, she already sensed before I said anything that I had something going on when she answered the phone. And then when I told her about what seemed to be going on, the very first thing she said very clearly and firmly was no, that I had never had these problems in the first place to return. They never happened, not one, and to not hold to them as part of my life and essentially permanently cut these ties and divorce myself from this false history I'd seemed to want to accept. A reminder that we're the children of the King and don't claim or want to claim a lesser mortal heritage. But it was more than nice words, because her understanding of God's allness was felt. And the treatment that she gave me over the phone was effective. Quickly, it brought me back to where I needed to be in my thinking. It helped to mitigate the fear and the disturbance I had been feeling and to defend myself better. When I called, I had been sitting in my car and had been thinking about leaving work. But after the treatment with her, I worked a full day, in fact, very late into the evening, and I even did some walking over lunchtime that I would not have wanted to do earlier. I have such gratitude in knowing that this practitioner support is available and lovingly given here to everyone that seeks it. And I thank our practitioners and to Mrs. Eddy for her wisdom in establishing the office of the practitioner, along with her discovery. And thanks again to Florence and all those participating in and supporting our service, as well as the music. Good night.
Thank you. Chardell.
Good evening. And yes, the readings were absolutely wonderful and music beautiful. I stand with much gratitude tonight. I am so grateful. I was thinking about it the other day a lot, as I have done before, that God has allowed me to come here to Plainfield. What a wonderful thing. This church is so outstanding. I would like to start with the practitioners. Mrs. Eddy said that miracles are natural, and that is proven here every single day as you've heard tonight. And the church, the watches, the band of watchers that we have in Unity Watches. I never heard of it till I came here. And they're so beautiful and so effective. You can tell by the things that happen. And then I've never seen in my life the kind of work that's done here. The selfless living and working is just amazing to me. And at first, when I first came here about 4 years ago, I couldn't believe how everybody did everything so quickly with such love and concentration and ability. And it's just a beautiful thing to watch. And then the truth of being, God's Word is going out from this church. And we know it because of our website that's reported, and also the people who are coming to the church. They come to all the meetings and classes, and also to the services. More and more people are coming, of course. So my heart overflows with love and gratitude, and I thank all of you.
Thank you. Dale from Virginia, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I am so grateful for the readings tonight, Florence. They're so beautiful and helpful. I'm also grateful for so many things in this church. One of the things is that for those who wish to have it, a daily email from the church. It contains a daily calendar statement and also a couple of other featured things. Today, one of the featured items was a testimony from one of the practitioners in this church on the definition of God. And this is something that was just really struck a note with me and was just what I needed for what I had to do today. And it's included in the readings tonight, too, the definition of God. And I will just read the first part of it. God, the great I am, the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-acting, all-wise, all-loving, and eternal. The part of it that says all-knowing and all-acting is something that I really held on to because I had to do something today that I had never done before, and I had no idea how to do it. And I just really turned to that God, if God is all-acting and God is all-knowing, and I am a reflection of God, then I can know what to do. And also I turned a little bit later to my desk. I had a note on my desk that this practitioner had given in the past, and it's from Job. And it says, "He that is perfect in knowledge is with thee." And that was just what I needed to know. And with just a little bit of research, with no problems at all, and not worrying about it because I knew that God was doing it, I was able to do what I had to do. I am so grateful for all the practical instruction in this church to help us in anything that we ever have to do. I'm grateful, so grateful for the readings, for all the wonderful testimonies, and the beautiful music tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone who has attested to God's glory tonight. I am so grateful for all that's going on in this church. Last week's lesson, the Genesis 1 section, my Sunday school students and I counted 6 times where very good or was good was mentioned. This emphasis on God's goodness, that everything he has created, because he is the only creator, and that everything he has created is good, gets me to think when I feel bad in any way or any negative is going on. A recent example is this. When one night after working all day, most of the time on a lesson and other work that I had to do, my computer went blank. just blank. Something came on that I've never seen before. I had no clue what to do. I couldn't get any access to internet either, so there was no way of getting any help that way. Previously, I would panic, go into the worried mode. I can't do what, all the other stuff that comes with that. I mean, God is with me. How can I lose all this? And I listened what to do. A few clicks I did, nothing was happening. But I'm grateful that I have learned not to panic. I walked away, and as I did, a citation came to thought, one I read tonight. It says, the real jurisdiction of the world is in mind, controlling even every effect and recognizing all causation as vested in mind. Right after that, the thought of all-knowing came, as a previous testifier just mentioned. It just said all-knowing. And then I'm thinking, God, of course he knows. Shortly after that, I was led to, I don't know what I clicked, but somehow I was led to something that said, recover. I clicked that, and in about 5 to 10 minutes, everything was back. This is a big deal for me. I'm sure some people, this is maybe nothing, but it's a big deal for me. And it really affirms to me the presence of God and his control over everything. I'm sharing this for somebody somewhere who probably is also intimidated by what goes on with computers and stuff. I am so grateful, first, that I have learned to not panic when things happen, to go to God, to the right concept of him, his power, his presence, his allness, his everywhereness, and to stay calm. I am so grateful for this change in me because I know how I used to live. Living in fear, anxiety, is not living at all. So I say this, or I mention this testimony to help someone who might be going through what I used to go through. So grateful for all the testimonies again, the music, and everybody's prayers towards our service. Grateful for Christ Jesus, God's revelation through Mrs. Eddy, and for how he is providing for this truth to go out to bless others everywhere. Grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you.